Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. Thank you guys for coming in. We might expect a few more people to stop by, but if not, this will be recorded. If you guys want to access this later. Um, so welcome to our ERC Flea Market info session and seller's permit workshop. This is hosted by the Environmental Resource Center. We are under associated students on campus. We focus mainly on environmental wellness, sustainability initiatives, and other programs. We host Friday food rescues, clothing swaps. We do some work at the Soul Patch Garden, which is behind the freshman housing. And you might see us on campus doing some collab events with the QTRC and HPW. But the ERC Flea Market was a new event that we have created last semester, and one of our interns had brought it up to us, and their intern team hosted the flea market together. So it's one of our newer events and one of our more successful events. Last semester, I feel like it was a big hit because we had student vendors come out and they were able to sell their items, and we got a lot of students to come by and buy the student vendors items. We wanted to host a flea market because it relates to sustainability. I know it's the Environmental Resource Center. You're thinking, why are you guys hosting a flea market? But it relates to sustainability because we want to sustain student lives. We focus a lot on programs that deal with food justice, housing justice, just making sure that students have their basic needs met. And when it comes to income, we know that some students have small businesses, so we want to make sure that we highlight those businesses or give them a chance to sell their items so they have some sort of income to sustain their lives. And also, sustainability also ties in with small businesses because compared to larger corporations and chains, they're not polluting, creating as much waste as bigger entities. So we want to kind of emphasize the fact that sustainability is intertwined with small businesses. So yeah, that's why we created the flea market. Also, you guys have any questions, be sure to leave it in the chat box and either I or my intern will answer them. So this is more about the flea market of last semester. We had about 18 vendors and a lot of students had shown up, which was pretty exciting considering the fact that we were still in the midst of a pandemic and not many students were on campus, but we got a pretty big turnout. But we still want to see even more students attend this semester's flea market, and we know that we will more likely have a bigger turnout because a lot more students are on campus. So that's what we're expecting. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Nicole. I'm the Sustainable Initiatives Coordinator for the ERC, and I'm also accompanied by my intern. Catalina, if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Catalina. I'm environmental science and geography major, and I'm the zero waste lead intern for the ERC.
So we're going to talk a bit about what to expect and what to bring for the flea market if you do decide to be a vendor. And then also we will transition into the seller permit workshop of the webinar. But what to expect? So the ERC flea market will be stationed in the quad, I would say in the center of the quad. So it'll be on the cement pathways. So that's where a lot of traffic will be. So you will have a lot of students coming up to your booth. The event goes from 12 to 4, but setup does begin at 11. So we ask that you guys come on time so we can designate you to your booth and get you set up. And students will have questions about what you're selling, maybe some other questions about how you make your items and such. So make sure you have questions prepared. Answers prepared because students will have questions. And then for what to bring, please bring something to hold your money. Also have cash because not everyone will be having single bills on them. and then also products you're selling, of course. And then also bring comfortable shoes and sunscreen. Make sure you think about, the finer details of things so you can take care of yourself while you're out there. It's going to be about 4 hours. So make sure you're wearing something comfortable, something breathable, just to make yourself comfortable. And also, as for your booth, make sure you bring some decorations, a tablecloth. We know from, or at least my intern knows from experience, that if your booth is more decorated, you might get more students to come up to your booth. And also, going back to accounting for yourself, make sure you bring water and snacks, because it might be hot, you might be in the sun, and you're going to be out there for about 4 hours. So make sure you bring water and something to eat. And then this is just a quick disclaimer on what not to bring. You can't sell food. Unfortunately, you can't sell food, even though if you have a permit, you can't sell food because we would have to go through a permit through the school, and because of time crunch, we aren't able to do that. But we are working on for next semester to have people be able to sell food. Don't bring any speakers. Music will be playing during the event, and there's some other things. Don't bring weapons or drugs. As for drugs, you guys are allowed to sell accessories for drugs, such as bongs. You guys are allowed to sell that, but just don't bring the actual drugs. And then at the bottom, it just says adhere to campus guidelines. So everything that's in the handbook for students, follow that, and we should be all good. Okay, so far, do you guys have any questions?
Will we have a specific designated spot for our booth, or do when we show up, do we just get to pick our spot in the area?
Right, yes. So we have a map already set out. So once we read through all your guys' applications and we decide who will be getting a table, we'll put you in a spot. And once you guys come at 11, you'll come up to one of us. I think we'll be wearing some lanyards so you'll know who we are, and you'll have your name on a table spot, and then you'll go to the designated table.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
There is something in the chat.
Okay. I have a crystal business. I was wondering if that's okay. Yeah, it's definitely okay. You can sell crystals, any kind of jewelry, yeah, anything. The only things that are prohibited really, food, weapons, and drugs. That's about it. You guys have a pretty large range of what you guys can sell. Do we have any other questions? Okay, sweet. Now we are going to transition into the seller permit workshop. Who here is actually trying to apply for a seller's permit? Okay, sweet.
Is it required to sell at the flea market?
Yes, great question.
Yes.
Oh no, wait.
Okay.
It's not required to sell at the flea market. We just want to make sure that if you guys do want to be a vendor somewhere else and they do require you to have a seller permit, you have it already. So we want you guys to be guided through that. But no, it's not required because we're not on state property. I think that's what the loophole is. But yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. So we are going to transition into the seller permit workshop. Catalina, if you want to take it away, and just let me know when you want me to switch slides.
Okay. Yeah, so next we're going to be doing the seller's permit and applying for it, and just the steps on how to follow that. I'll put the link into the chat for where you have to sign up for that. You can go to the next slide. So you'd go to the CDTFA website, which I put the link in the chat, and kind of this is what steps to follow. You click on the register for a permit link, or you go to that section on the page and you're going to click the register online link, and it'll redirect you to another page. Then you can go to the next slide. So you'll scroll down to the section that says register for a permit, license, or account, and you're gonna look for the link that says add a new business location to an existing account. Even if you don't have an account yet, it'll still work. So you'll click the link for new business location. Then you can go to the next slide. So it'll redirect you to this page. It's just pretty much the application and whole process. First, well, if you were going to apply for the flea market, but you don't exactly have to follow these steps. It's just an example. But let's say that you're getting a seller's permit, you would just select the first option for selling items or goods in California, seller's permit, and then you would click next at the very bottom of the page. And then you can go to the next slide. And this would apply, of course, for the flea market. You would just select no for all of them, but it really just depends on what apply to you. And then you just click next at the bottom of the page. You can go to the next slide. This next one is also what applies to you, just depending on what you're selling. So if you have fuel products, lumber products, prepaid wireless services, and all that stuff, you just click what applies to you, and then you click next at the bottom of the page. And then you can go to the next slide. And then this question is, what business type are you registering for? If you're just selling stuff, like for example, at a flea market, you would just put individual/sole proprietor, and then you'd click next. You can go to the next slide. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You just put what information applies to you. You can select what kind of identification you want to use, social or anything like that, and then you just input the information, at least what is required. And then, for example, like a license number and stuff like that. So you just do that, and then are you changing from one business type or business entity to another? If you have applied for this before, if you're changing from one different kind of business type to another, then you click yes. But if not, and you're new to this, you would just click no, and then you'd click next at the bottom of the page. And then for this one, do you have a current account with CDTFA? If you do already, you would just click yes, and it'd redirect you to the next page. Then click, and if you don't have one, you just click no, and then you click next. And so since you'd be applying for a seller's permit, you'd click yes, and then click next at the bottom of the page. And then this would be a temporary permit. So if you're selling over the span of like maximum 90 days, it would be a temporary seller's permit, so you click yes. So I see a question in the chat. So the point of doing a permit, if you're selling, like say at like a different flea market, it will be necessary. It might be necessary to actually have it because it's registered for like taxes and stuff like that, and just that you're allowed and you're approved by the state to actually sell your stuff. So you need to do that. Later on, I'll get into like the time frame of where like when you're going to be selling, because you can choose what time frame. You have like an option of how long you'll be able to sell for. But yeah. Let's see. I think, yeah, there are some like bigger farmers markets that do require them. Like once you actually get checked in as a vendor, they actually ask for it, and they have to like register and stuff like that just to make sure. But I know that there are some that don't really need it, but usually it's necessary. Yes, and then you can go to the next slide. Did you skip a slide? Oh no, I think it's fine. Okay, yeah. So I put April 21st because that'll be the day for the ERC flea market, but depending on when you're selling separately, it would just based on your start date or temporary start date. So when you're planning to sell from when to when, you would just select when you'd be starting to sell, and then you'd click next. And so now you put in the information of where you're selling at. So let's say it's actually a different flea market. You put in the address of that flea market. Here I put the address for the school because that would be where we're selling at. And then use this address as a temporary event location. If you're like permanently selling there, then you put no. But if you're just selling like maybe like once at that location or a few times, but it's not your permanent location, you would just put yes. And then you would click next at the bottom of the page. You can go to the next slide. So here you're putting in all your information. It's like taxpayer information, so they have all that. You just at the bare minimum put the required information, and then since from the previous slides you already put your identification numbers or other identification, it already have that inputted. I just blurred it out for privacy reasons. And then contact information for if for any reason they need to contact you, you just put your phone number and the email address. And then click next. And then for our books and records maintained by owner, and is the owner the contact for business activities, you would put yes for both if you are like a small business and you kind of handle all your like finances and things like that. And if you're the owner and like if somebody needs to contact you for any reason, you just put yes. But for example, if you don't maintain your finances and somebody else is doing that, then you put no and then follow the instructions afterwards. And then you'd click next at the bottom. And then for here, it's asking if you're going to be accepting credit card payments or if you make internet sales. So you'd apply, click it applies to you. So if you like accept credit card payments through like Venmo or PayPal, you'd click yes. And then if you make internet sales through apps like, I don't know, like eBay or Mercari or Depop, you put yes also. And then you can click the next button at the bottom of the page. Yeah, and so if you click yes for the credit card information or credit card payments, you would put the merchant card processor name. So for example, PayPal or Venmo, even if you accept multiple, you at least have to put one. And then for the merchant card processor account, you just put your username. And then for internet sales, if you put yes, it's like, are you making internet sales through a third party? So that would be like through another website, for example, like Depop or eBay, then you put yes. If you're selling it through your own website or something, you put no. And then if you use a third-party website, you would just put that information in the boxes below. So the website and then your specific website that you use. And then click next at the bottom. So next, it's going to ask you some information about, it's a NAICS code. It's pretty much like what you sell or what applies to your business. So what you do is you click the add NAICS code at the top right above primary. And then you can click then, or go to the next slide. And then a pop-up will show and it'll ask you to add your business activity code. You'll just put in like a keyword, so something that kind of relates to your business, and you just kind of have to scroll through what applies to yours. You could just put like jewelry or like yarn or clothing or things like that. It might have to take a couple of tries because it's oddly specific. So when you click on it, it'll give you like a kind of description of what you'd be selling, and you just click what applies to you. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so once you do that, you just click it, select it, and then it'll ask you to click OK at the bottom of the screen to add the code. And then you just apply as many codes as you want for your business. You can just put one if you really want to, but you can apply more than one if necessary. And then it'll just redirect you back to the original page, and you'd click next at the bottom of the page. So next, it's going to ask you if for if the business, if your business conducts any of the following activities, you kind of would click what applies to you really. Most of the time you just click no, but it just really depends if you if any of these specifically apply to you. Then you click next at the bottom of the page. So this is asking about the temporary event location. So if you clicked temporary, you have a temporary event. This is when it would direct you to this page. So if you were doing it for the ERC flea market, then you put in this information. It just really depends on where you're selling, and it just what applies to you. And then you would click next at the bottom of the page. Then you can go to the next slide. So yeah, it'll ask you if you're going to use this address as the business location. You put yes, you put in the information of where, and you put next. And then if you want to add an additional business location, you can put that. It's like if you sell at another place too, and it's like specific location. I only put to select no, because for the ERC flea market, it would just be that one location, but then you would click next, or go to the next slide, please. It would put in the address for the school, but it would just be where you're specifically selling at. Then you click next. And then here it's asking like the start date and end date. I only put these dates because that was when we'd be selling for the flea market, but you can put whenever you're selling at the beginning to the end, just so it has that information on the permit, so that when you present it, it's not like out of date. And then you're also going to be putting some of the products that you'll be selling. It can just be general, like if you're selling crocheted items, jewelry, things like that, crystals, for example. You just put that information. It doesn't have to be too much, just a brief description. And then you just click next, bottom of the page. Now it's going to ask you an address for your taxes and just a mailing address for the information. You would click to add a different address, since you don't want to send it to the school or wherever you're selling at. You want to send it to your personal address, so you click add a different address. Thank you. Go to the next slide. So it's going to ask you to put in your information. You're just going to put your personal address, and then you're going to click OK. And go to the next slide. So then you're going to select your address. I just put it out for privacy reasons, but it'll show up your address once you input it, and you're going to select your address for both the books and records address and the mailing address. Then you click next at the bottom of the page. So next is going to ask you where you get your supplies from. You only need to do a minimum of one. If you want to put more than that, you can, but first you'd be clicking add a record. And if you go to the next slide. So it's going to ask you for information. You can just like put one place. So like, for example, if you go to Michael's for your supplies, you can put that in. You put Michael's for the name, the phone number for that specific location that you get yours from, some of the products that you bought, yarn, beads, string, etc. Then you put the address of this location, and then you click add at the bottom of the page. If you go to the next slide, and then you just click the next button at the bottom of the page. It'll show the it'll show the record when you input the information, but here I just didn't add it yet. But then you click next, and then the next slide. So you want to make sure that the address where you're going to be selling at is correct, and then when you're going to be selling, so the time frame, and then what. Make sure that the information matches. And then the question below, it's kind of covered, but it's asking if the above account information is correct. And you click yes, and then you click the next button. So here it's going to ask for your information again. You'd click yes, it's going to ask you what your role in this application is. It's going to be like owner, or there's going to have some other options, but if you own your business, then you just put owner. You'd put your name, email address, and your phone number, and click the next button. So this is just making sure that you are signing it and that you're actually understanding how the registration process works. So you just click the box and then click next. And then it's just a voter registration question. You don't need to answer it. You can just say, no, I don't want to register a vote, or I am already registered to vote, or whatever applies to you, or whatever you prefer. Then you can click the next button. And I blurred out the information, but it'll show your name, the address, and all the information for you personally. So you just verify that the information is correct, and then you're just going to click submit. And then it's going to ask if you are sure you want to submit this request. You're going to put OK. And then it'll send you this to this page. Right after your application, it's not going to give you the information right away. They have to process it. So if you click printable view PDF, it's not going to show up right away. It's going to redirect you to another page. So you just have to click I'm done, but later on you'll receive an email, and it'll have some of the information, the confirmation code and everything like that. And then later on, maybe a few days later, you can recheck it, and it'll send you to the PDF, and it'll have the information and what you need to print out and bring whenever you decide to sell. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Did you want to close it, Nicole?
Yes. Okay. Does anyone have any questions regarding the permit application? Okay.
So are there fees associated with maintaining a seller's permit? No, there are not. I think it's more of like, if you sell a certain amount, you'll have to end up paying taxes. It's not necessarily based on if you have this, how long you have the seller's permit. It doesn't cost any money if you like do it through this process. If you're selling certain items, like for example, some of the stuff that was shown before, like things from a vending machine, there's certain items that have to be taxed where you do have to pay, and there's certain items that if you sell it, you do have to pay additional just for taxes reasons. But for the seller's permit itself, it shouldn't cost any money. It's just kind of taxes on your business, if anything.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? Sweet. All right, so that is the end of our presentation. Here's some dates for you guys. If you guys have not applied for the vendor to be a vendor, the last day to do so is this Friday, April 15th by 5 p.m. Spots are filling fast, so if you have not applied, please apply. And then once you apply and you are accepted, you will get an email on Sunday, April 17th by 5 p.m. And if you are not accepted, you can still be a vendor if you bring your own table. The only reason is because we are only given 20 tables and chairs, so we can only have 20 vendors have a table. But if you do provide your own table, you can be a vendor. And then as we specified before, setup begins at 11, so make sure you're there at that time so you have enough time to set up, and then the event begins at 12. Also, our flea market is a part of a larger series of events called Earth Week. So we'll be having a vegan social, Green Rush, that's where a bunch of environmental organizations from the Bay Area come out the table. We'll also be doing a beach cleanup. So watch out for that. We'll be having some flyers rolled out to you guys soon. You can check it out on our Instagram, which is AS_ERC_SFSU. And if you have any questions, make sure to email us at erc@asi.sfsu.edu. Or if you're on campus, stop by our office in the Cesar Chavez Student Center, T121. yeah, if you guys don't have any more questions, then that's the end of our presentation. And thank you guys so much for coming.